Hello, my name is Zeiler, and this is my controversial lecture presentation for Dr. Super's History 820 course. My topic is the dropping of the first atomic weapon on Japan, and it would fit into a World War II ideologies undergraduate course. The controversy surrounding this decision to drop the first atomic weapon on Hiroshima and then another one on Nagasaki a few days later brings into focus the ideology from the beginning of World War II until the end of World War II. There were great ideologies, and the power structure of the world was changing. However, these ideologies had not changed. There was a battle, ideological and physical, a battle between the Western democracies of the free world, including France, Great Britain, Canada, the United States, and also against the great fascist dictatorships of Italy, who had surrendered by this time, and Germany, who was surrendering, and then also militaristic Tojo Japan. And the third great ideology was communism under Soviet Russia, and how they wanted to spread that ideology. So in the beginning of the war, the great powers that be were afraid of a Nazi conquest of Europe and spreading that ideology around the world, and it made some strange bedfellows. So the United States and Communist Russia teamed up to defeat European fascism, and then eventually also Japanese militaristic Tojo Japan. So early on the morning of August 6, 1945, a bright, shiny B-29 bomber called the Enola Gay took off from recently conquered Okinawa, Japanese-held island, to bomb Hiroshima. And the decision surrounding this attack on a Japanese city was controversial at its time and has been for the past 75 years. At the end of the war, this act was used to solidify Americans' position around the world and create a post-World War, attitude, because all the key active players knew that Nazi fascists and Tojo Japan were all finished, that they were not going to rule the world, and the next great ideological conflict around the world was going to be between two emerging superpowers, the United States of America and USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. So, like I said, some of the conflict was brought about even before the bomb was dropped. Dr. Zeiler, who was one of the key members of the Manhattan Project, the project that created the science behind the atomic bomb, had concerns about using a weapon of this destructive capability on a city where there would be so much civilian death. And he did not want that. He had an idealistic scientific vision of the future in which nuclear power could be used by America, shared with all countries around the world, and that it would end conflicts because it would be able to eliminate the need to compete for energy. And unfortunately, that is not the world that emerged. It was not likely that the United States was going to share with all countries, because once a weapon of this destructive capability was able to be used, there is no way that other nations would be as restrictive and without some sort of an idea that they would also be destroyed. New weapons are used, and that's the way it is. So to demonstrate, some scientists wanted to demonstrate the use of the bomb on some deserted, unpopulated areas where there would be no people, and therefore demonstrate the destructive capability of this bomb, and therefore show Japan they had no way of winning, and from that be able to end the war without destroying Hiroshima or some other Japanese city. Unfortunately, those in political power in the United States already believed that there was no way that that was going to happen. First, there weren't that many atomic bombs. At that time, there were only about 3. One of them was used to test to see if the thing would even work, and we had 2 left. And we used both of them. And so the problem was that if these things didn't go off, it was one detonated. We didn't know if 1 out of the 3 was going to be a dud because it was such a new and untested technology. And if it had been a failure and we told the whole world, look at this great weapon that we have, and then it didn't go off, it would be more than just embarrassing for the United States. It would be detrimental to our foreign political power because the deterrent capability of that weapon would be for naught. Also, generals and the president at that time, Truman, were also convinced that Japan was not going to surrender. In fact, they were pulling all of their forces back to Japan for a philosophy called Ketsugo, which was to extract such a high price for attacking the Japanese home islands that America would just get tired and go home, or it would be a bittersweet victory. And they were prepared to do it. And based on what Americans had seen in Okinawa and Iwo Jima, the idea was that that was going to happen in Japan as well. They were arming as much as they can every citizen, and American soldiers would be shooting old people and children and anybody that got in their way, because everybody would be attacking American soldiers as they tried to subdue the Japanese home islands. Also, the use of firebombs with whole fleets of B-29 bombers who ran unopposed because Japan had virtually no air force left, bombed Tokyo and other cities, creating great destruction as well as great loss of life. And Japan had not flinched or even considered surrendering. It was only after the second atomic bomb that the emperor himself decided that to save his homeland and his people, that he would end the war, and they surrendered, and the United States gladly took their surrender. And so the decision was made to use the atomic bomb once, wait and see if Japan surrendered, and then use it again when they did not. And the idea was that it would save lives, not just American soldiers' lives, because at the time, Truman was getting statistics from his generals saying that at a bare minimum, we could not attack until November of 1945, and the war might last into 46, if not into early 1947, costing at least 63,000 American lives and up to 1 million. And that was a significant loss of life because, well, that was more than the rest of the war all put together. And so it was made, the decision to use the bomb was made to save American lives, American servicemen lives, and win the war as quickly as possible, as well as Japanese lives. Because there was no way that the United States was going to stop continually bombing every Japanese city they could, attacking the Japanese homeland, and as I said a few seconds ago, with shooting people that were non-combatants in a ground war as we overtook the Japanese home islands. The last issue towards the end of the war was that Russia had finished defeating Germany with us in Europe, and they were refocusing a massive amount of troops and tanks through, and had already attacked Manchuria, and that's when the decision became real, that we had to, in fact, defeat Japan. Otherwise, the Soviet expansion over not just Europe, but into the Southeast Asia was also going to have some serious consequences. Actually, they did. As far as Russia got, the influence helped to ensure that China, mainland China, became communist, and later on the ideology of Korea, and later on Vietnam. So the rest of the 20th century was based off of this one decision. And the use of an atomic weapon did not create the Cold War. That was coming anyway. But it did limit the Cold War because it contained as much as possible the Soviets' expansionist tendency into the region of Southeast Asia. So the decision would be this. Was after the firebombing and no surrender, and then Russia trying to get in there and change the fate of the world in that region, intimidating American hegemony in that region. These things were all playing in the mind of President Truman when he made his decision to drop the bomb. He didn't want to see more Americans die in a war, and it must have, if it were me, it would seem like an easy way out. But reading his diary and letters he wrote to his wife, he did not make this decision lightly. And as a Christian, he did not want to kill innocent people, but he made the decision to save as many lives, both Japanese, American, and later even Russian, in ending this war as quickly as possible. That decision had big influence on the rest of the 20th century, and we are still feeling the effects of that in the modern world today. So with that, thank you for watching my short presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.